Well, greetings. Hello, hello, hello. I am so happy to see you here. And today is, as you may see in the title, is a big milestone, a big celebration for me. Just taking, if nothing else, a moment of self-acknowledgement. This all the work I've put into this. But I've also wrote down a few notes I want to share that I think will be valuable for you watching. It's not just about me tooting my own horn. This is kind of about a bigger project of medicine and science and philosophy and all the good stuff. So the as it says in the title, today is day number 2,500. That's a huge milestone. That's just shy of 7 years, where every day for at least 30 to 60 minutes, often more, I will sit down and in a focused way, very deliberately study one of the main texts from these fields, right? The fields that I practice in medicine, but also the fields surrounding it in the broader areas of science and philosophy, and really how we augment what we actually do in medicine and actually get the results that we do. So, as I say, thank you for joining me. It's not going to be all about me. I want to give some valuable points here. And let me just tell you a little bit. I have some jotted down notes here. Um, that's what I'm just saying. It's this 2,500 days in a row is just shy of 7 years. I started on October the 1st, 2017. So that will be, as I say, coming up on 7 years. And my main focus has been on the three primary authors in my world. Of course, we have Samuel Hahnemann, the founder of medical Heilkunst and homeopathy. That's we can't ignore him, right? He's kind of the granddaddy of the whole the practical medical side of all this. But you kind of can't stop there. Say he gives the whole structure, and there's this deep philosophy implicit in Heilkunst, but the other two authors that I turn to more and more and more over time are Rudolf Steiner and Wilhelm Reich. So I go into other authors, other writings as well, but between the three of them, we get this incredible, like not just a practical medical system, we need practicality, we need to get practical results and how to do it, how do you diagnose and how do you give a homeopathic remedy, all these very practical questions. But the more we get into the depths of healthcare, the more we're kind of tasked with this bigger question of how to get past more and more complex cases, right? And we're living at a time, I can tell you from clinical experience that the nature of health, the nature of people's health challenges are getting more and more difficult to solve for all kinds of reasons. There's practical reasons, and we can talk about all the toxins in the air and these kinds of things, some of the physical factors of life, but even more so from the point of view of understanding medicine is this idea of the philosophical framework. You can't improve a system of medicine just on a practical level, like, or to say that a slightly different way, just by basic trial and error, you can't get very far. You can discover some things, and of course, much of the history of medicine is based on that, and that's okay. We have some body of knowledge, we have a history of medicine, we have some discoveries, but what I just said a moment ago, this increasingly complex picture of complex health issues, chronic health issues, you can't solve through trial and error because it doesn't have enough resolution, to see a greater and a bigger picture of what we're actually up against. What is a human being? It's like we're not just a bag of bones and skin with some organs sewn in, and somehow we have a heart and a blood. It's like that's kind of the Mickey Mouse version of anatomy and physiology. It's kind of overly simplified, but we have many, many dimensions of not just all of our body parts, but our mind, our spirit, our emotional body, all of these things and more, and how those interact and what's going on in chronic illness. As I say, we're tasked to kind of understand a greater and a greater and a greater degree of complexity of what the human being actually is. And so, as I say, all this is the idea of this whole study project for myself is to raise the resolution of what I can see. I guess it's sort of this is a bit of a philosophical concept, but very important. We don't just see because we wake up in the morning and open our eyes. That's important, but we seeing is also related to our state of mind. What's that old saying? Seeing is believing. Well, it's kind of the other way around. It's like believing, or I would change that to consciousness is seeing. And actually this takes us into an old Greek word, theoria. We have our modern English word of theory. So, oh yeah, he has a theory, she has a theory. That's an interesting theory. And often we use that in a derogatory way. It's like, oh yeah, it's like, well, that's your opinion, but who knows what the truth is, right? We kind of have this downgraded understanding of the word theory. But back to this Greek word of theoria, as I said a minute ago, is is like I just said, it's this turning upside down, seeing is believing. Actually, theoria is consciousness is seeing. You need a certain frame of consciousness, a certain framework of clear ideas that allows you to see. So as I said a minute ago, we don't just wake up and open our eyes and therefore we see that day. No, you have a worldview, you have a framework that generally we don't even realize that we have, and so therefore, that's what gives us the ability to see. And of course, as I'm saying in this broader context, we want to be able to see more and more accurately, more and more clearly, more and more deeply, into the structure of the human being. So I'm just giving you a general framework here. This project, not just because I enjoy the topic, of course, I would do it, I would do it just for fun, as they say. What's that old expression? What would you do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life or something like that? But similar to that idea is, there's a deep love driving me, but there's also a deep practical reason that to accomplish what I need to, what we want to, in terms of really effective healthcare, requires deeper and deeper clarity in our philosophical framework. So, as I say, it is fun for me, it is a love function for me, but it's also deeply practically important to really develop this whole deepened and clarified philosophical framework. So that's a bit of my overall reason for doing this, and you'll see a little bit when I'm going to share some of the key insights in some of the books I've read. So as I say, today's day 2500. We're just shy of 7 years. It will be 7 years on October the 1st. And in that time frame, 2,500 days, I've now completed a deep study of 75 books. I'm in the middle of two new ones, so I'll be at 77. But that's basically, I don't know the exact math there, but it's more than a month. It's at least 5 or 6 weeks, something like that, to finish a book the way I'm doing it. And this is a very deliberately slow and deep study process where I'm taking notes, I'm reading things slowly and carefully, I'm thinking about it, I'm relating the ideas in any book I'm reading to other books I've read, and oh yeah, this author says this, and this author said that. How do those ideas relate? Often it's actually the same idea, they just say it in different words. Sometimes they're opposite ideas, and you have to reconcile the contradictions. It's like, well, why did this person say this, and this person says the total opposite? And how do you make meaning out of that? So, there's some philosophical puzzles and contradictions we kind of have to solve there. But one way or another, we're in this realm of this is that even though everyone has each writer has their own vocabulary, their own way of expressing the ideas, they're all united under kind of these common philosophical elements of this framework here. So we'll see that in just a moment. I want to get into some of the books, but as I say, so 75 books now are on the finished book. Of course, I will reread any number of them. They're quite powerful books. We're not just reading Archie comics here. And just some of the general insights I've gotten in this process so far is as I did just say, kind of not only finding the ideas, but finding the interlinking between, all of these different thoughts. And as I also said, this has a reason, has a purpose of not just playing with ideas for like building sandcastles in the air, as the old expression goes, but actually having a practical impact on how well medicine works. As I said a couple of minutes ago, the greater your philosophical and conceptual clarity is, the deeper you can see into the human being and what's going on in chronic illness, right? It's not just a random occurrence of, some toxin or some genetic mutation or something. There's a much deeper process going on. So, and I sort of hinted at this a moment ago as well. We have Hahnemann, our great medical teacher, giving us homeopathy and Heilkunst and how do you diagnose and how do you do all these practical things. But we have not only, but especially in Rudolf Steiner and Wilhelm Reich, we have these great philosophical expansions of what is the human being and how do we move through the world, how do we develop, what is our mind, what is our life energy, all of these kind of deep medical and philosophical concepts. Hahnemann's system kind of hints at it, but Steiner and Reich really give us very, very detailed, science and philosophy as to how to unpack those concepts. So let me get into. I just have my notes here. I've picked out five, of the 75 books I've gone through so far. I've picked out five of the top books, and it's kind of unfair. They're all top books in a way, but I'm just focusing on five, which I have or will read, more than one time, just because they're so powerful. And number one, we have Rudolf Steiner's book, Philosophy of Freedom, or you may know that book by one of its more recent translations called Intuitive Thinking is a Spiritual Path. That's kind of an alternative way of translating the idea of that book into a different title. Same book, Philosophy of Freedom. And this, Steiner himself said, was of everything he wrote, all of his many books and his 6,000 lectures that are also available to read. He put out a huge amount of output, and it's a little bit of where do you start, and like how do you find your way through all these writings. Well, he himself said this book, The Philosophy of Freedom, will be the only book that's still around in 500 or 1,000 years from now. Everything else will fall away from history, but this book will stand the test of time. That's an amazing thing to say, because as I say, the amount that he put out and how powerful all his writings are and everything. But why would he say that about this book? Well, fundamentally, in the Philosophy of Freedom, he gives us this fundamental methodology of thinking, of knowledge, of science, all forms of science, all forms of acquiring knowledge. Like this, in a sense, he says it in so many words, with this method, even if and when all of his other books disappeared, into the nothingness of history, the method of this book will allow anyone to recreate all the knowledge that he shared with us. So, that's quite an amazing thing. So this method that he gives us, as I say, it's the foundation of thinking, it's the foundation of science, the foundation of knowledge, and what he calls that, if and when you read this book, it's something he calls the exceptional state of thinking. Well, and this can again be its own multi-hour lecture. I just want to say this in a very brief way. You'll have to read the book and you'll have to think through this for yourself further. I just kind of want to make some medical points that are implicit in this. But what he calls the exceptional state is this. What he means by exceptional is that it's not our usual way of thinking. Normally we have an everyday normal way of thinking. I get up out of bed, I make breakfast, I do this, I do that. We're using ordinary thinking to navigate through through the day, right? It's like, oh yeah, there's the kettle, and I'm going to turn it on, and I'm going to make tea, and I'm going to, we're kind of having all of this ordinary description in our own minds. Oh yeah, I see this, I'm doing this, I'm turning this on, I'm cutting up, cutting up this food to eat it, and whatever the thing is. This is just ordinary observation and the ordinary descriptive language that goes with that, and that's all well and good. We get through life on that basis, right? But what he calls the exceptional state, and as I say, it being the basis of the of science and knowledge and all of these other higher elevated results of our thinking, is the state where we actually we're not just using thinking for the ordinary objects we see around us, but we're actually in this able to get into this dynamic process of where thinking um, can behold itself, so to speak. We can, in this living dynamic way, we can see the activity of our own thinking and our own engagement in that process, in a living dynamic way, which we are kind of creating, um, dynamically creating thoughts as we go. It's like, what's that old expression? I'm going to build a plane, or oh yeah, I'm gonna jump out of a plane and build the parachute on my way down. There's something dynamic about that image. You could kind of apply that to what I'm saying about the exceptional state, the exceptional thinking. It's kind of like you're watching yourself produce your own thoughts as you're kind of living through the process of doing it. It's not like, to say it from the other side, the ordinary state of thinking that we use every day, as I say, that's us seeing the results of our thoughts after they've already happened, versus the exceptional state where we see ourselves, and actively participate ourselves in the actual creation of the living thinking. So I'm going to leave it at that. As you kind of have to think through it. You have to read his, where he writes about this and the implications. But just so you know, like, it's a very powerful thought, and what I want to kind of leave this all important point on is applying it back to medicine. If you know Heilkunst and you know how we use medicine and all of that, you can say, the ordinary approach of homeopathy, where we're treating certain symptoms, a sore throat, what have you. To use Steiner's language here, we can call that ordinary medicine. Hahnemann doesn't talk about it that way. I'm just drawing a parallel here, versus Steiner's exceptional state of thinking, where we get into that in Heilkunst, where we're going after the deeper root causes of disease, not just the symptoms. Symptoms are okay to treat, but until you treat the root cause, the symptom just keeps coming back, or another form of it. So what I'm calling, ordinary symptoms, ordinary medicine, ordinary homeopathy, we can now take Steiner's term, the exceptional state, and we'll call that in Heilkunst these exceptional root cause remedies, what we call tonic prescribing, or we can say it at another level, like, these are getting into the deep archetypes of nature. So it's like when you turn to art and literature and movies and things like that, great art, great literature kind of reuses these old archetypes over and over and over again. Unrequited love, the theme of injustice, the hero's journey, somebody discovering their path on life, kind of thing. These deep archetypes come up in art over and over and over again. Well, I'm just using this as a parallel here. This is the exceptional state of medicine that Hahnemann gave us. He didn't call it that, but it's now where we can tap into these deep disease archetypes, these deep themes of these deep chronic diseases that all of humanity suffers, and it's always the same, just like the archetypes in art. They're always the same. The stories can change and the characters can be different and everything, but they're living the same archetype. Well, same in these deep root cause diseases, just like the archetypes, they're always the same. So, anyways, this is my medical point I wanted to make out of the philosophy of freedom and Steiner's exceptional state. It gives us this capacity in Hahnemann's medicine to do this deep curative treatment of now we're treating the archetypes underneath disease and not just the symptomatic expression. So that, as I say, you cannot get more power under your belt than that in medicine. Okay, the second book is also by Rudolf Steiner, and that's called, well, it has different titles depending on the translation. An Outline of Esoteric Science is one of the more recent ones. I'll go with that title. And this is a huge book, not just in number of pages. It has a lot of pages, several hundred. It's one of these doorstop of a books, but it's also huge in terms of its content and its implications. Like what he does in this book is he gives us this incredibly huge map of the human being, the human consciousness, the processes of the earth and the cosmos, and the evolution of all of the above. He gives a big, 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 big map of all of that, like unlike anything pretty much any of us have seen before, right? If you think 5,000 or 10,000 or even 100,000 years is a long time of human history, that's nothing. Like he's giving these grand planetary cycles of human evolution, going from one, not just one historical phase of humanity to the next, but one planetary cycle to the next. I say it's a big, 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 big story. I can barely even touch on any of the details here. Kind of takes us out of the purpose of today's video. But just so you know, and it's I'd call it one of the Bibles if we're in dynamic medicine, dynamic philosophy, dynamic science. The previous book I mentioned, Philosophy of Freedom, is one of these Bibles. You need to keep going back to that book over and over and getting deeper and deeper into understanding it. Same with this book. It was one of the first Steiner books I read something like 25 years ago, and I had a certain understanding of what I read then, not very good understanding. It was very, I didn't really have any background in Steiner and anthroposophy, and much knowledge of Heilkunst. Even I was just at the beginning of that. But now that I reread this book, very recently actually, some 25 years later, wow, it's blown my doors right off. It's like I remembered what I had read 25 years ago. It's like, oh yeah, I remember when he was making these points and talking about this kind of, meditation exercise and this part of human evolution and this, that, and like I remembered the points, but reading it now, I'm like, oh, now I actually understand what he's talking about at another level. As I say, I had almost no understanding. Now I have some decent understanding. I have a ways to go still, but yeah, this, as I say, this is kind of the second Bible. If you want to have a little canon of all the most essential books, and I guess the medical, as I say, we could go on for hours and hours on the content of this book, but I'll maybe make one final medical implication that I find in this book, and that is where he's giving this grand, grand, grand map of humanity and the cosmos and our place in it and how evolution is progressing in a certain direction and all these things. That's a huge picture. In our immediate practical medical consciousness, there's a great parallel between what we're doing with Hahnemann's medicine. We are always aiming, in terms of diagnosis and prescription, to move the patient forward in kind of a positive evolutionary direction, right? They're moving forward in their life. The symptoms are being pushed out. What we always say, better out than in. So it's the direction of cure, which is a powerful medical concept, as opposed to the direction of suppression, which is just like sweeping the symptoms under the rug. Not a good idea, right? So that's a backwards process of evolution. So you go to the allopathic doctor for most of the prescriptions that they hand out are going backwards in a patient's evolution, sweeping symptoms under the rug. It looks good. Oh, the symptoms disappeared. That was a miracle drug. But the consciousness and the evolutionary direction of the patient got pushed backwards. Not good. So anyway, the cure versus suppression is a major Heilkunst medical concept, but I would say, yeah, that's one of the big medical implications of this outline of esoteric science. So let me leave it at that, because yeah, that book could take, we could spend the rest of our lives just studying and discussing that one book. It's kind of got everything in it, as far as the history of humanity and evolution and all the rest of it. Third book. Now, what we're going to turn to Wilhelm Reich, um, and very briefly, he was you could say, one of the star pupils of Sigmund Freud, and the psychoanalytic school. He was kind of a rising star in the psychoanalytic world, and kind of one of the pet students under Freud. He was kind of, you could say, being groomed to be the next leader of the psychoanalytic movement in the generation following Freud. But for various reasons, and starting with this book, one of these, it's a very thick book, just like I said about Outline of Esoteric Science, but it's not just big in size. Again, it's big in implications. And where he was this star pupil in psychoanalysis, this book was kind of the beginning of the end of his psychoanalytic association, in that sense, where he was starting to break away in very profound ways. And so the name of this book, Character Analysis, is kind of this obvious, deliberate change from psychoanalysis to a different concept. No, we're not doing psychoanalysis. The title is telling us we're doing character analysis. Well, what does that mean? Well, that has deep, deep therapeutic implications and meanings. But very, very briefly, just to say that Reich's criticism of Freud and psychoanalysis was that it was out on this mystical level of abstraction and wasn't actually getting to the root of anything. And this is the old joke about psychoanalysis. People, Woody Allen in movies and everything else. It's kind of like, well, I've been in psychoanalysis for 25 years, and I like my therapist, and we just have a good talk every week. But it's like this implication that, well, the content is just getting recycled around and around and around and around. And yeah, there may be some nice insights, that the person kind of now understands about their behaviors or whatever, but the actual medical progress is not being made. So this was Reich's big problem and why he broke away. And of course, he went deeper and deeper and deeper into the direction he went in. But this was the beginning of his character analysis. And as I say, this is another book we could spend the rest of our lives studying, this one book and discussing it and the implications of it. And yeah, we would never run out of juice to squeeze out of that. So anyway, I'm just giving you a big, big thumbnail sketch there. Sorry, that's kind of more of a tease than what you want to hear more, but we can get into more in another video. But what I want to do for the purpose of this video is take this idea of this breakaway from psychoanalysis and actually getting into a curative direction, just like we said with Hahnemann's remedies. Now we have these curative remedies. Imagine that. Well, now we have curative psychoanalysis, curative character analysis in Reich's terms. And if we take all of that and plug it back into our previous book, Steiner's Esoteric Science, we get not only Reich's medical power, getting into breaking down the character and the blockages in the emotional body and the expression in life, and how someone's relationships and all the things that Reich is touching on, and liberating the blockages in the structure of that patient. What if we take all that idea, in fact, I've done this, and plug it back into the second book, The Outline of Esoteric Science by Steiner, where Steiner gives us this great, great big map of the human being, including all of our subtle energy bodies. We not only have a physical body, but we have an etheric body of life functioning, an astral body of dreams and desires, and then a higher fourth body of kind of the human individuality, or you can say the spiritual ego, to coin a term on the fly. When you get into the second of those, I just said, that etheric body, that life functioning body, Steiner talks about that in his book, Esoteric Science, and how at this phase of our evolution, let me jump back here. So where Reich is talking about character analysis, And another term that Reich uses is resistance analysis. We kind of get all these embedded resistances into our etheric body, as Steiner calls it. So that's in Reich's terms, those are the blockages to the emotional body and our functioning and our happiness and our relationships, all these other things. Reich talks about this very down to earth practical level of it. But let's plug the therapeutics of Reich back up into Steiner and what he's saying with the etheric body, and we get this much bigger resistance analysis of the subtle spiritual bodies, where on our evolutionary path, now you see you take Reich's therapeutics and you can actually practically unlock these higher evolutionary goals that Steiner is pointing to. So now you get the two of them working together on this massive health transformation. Not just our physical body, but all these other bodies I mentioned. Now we're putting like some serious gas on the fire, as the expression goes, and really, really accelerating what we can do here with all of these therapeutics and this bigger understanding of why. Why would we want to do that? What does it mean? Where are we actually going to move the patient to? So yeah, I'm kind of tapping into a big idea here, but we kind of have to leave it at that. I just wanted to point to this and some of the power that I'm starting to get out of all this deeper studying that I've been doing. The fourth book, again, we're still on Wilhelm Reich, and we're on one of his big books again, The Cancer Biopathy. I can't begin to tell you how powerful his cancer research is. And we live in this modern allopathic world where cancer research, cancer treatment is an absolute disaster. And I know even if you want to point to some successes, it's like, oh yeah, well this patient, they got rid of this form of cancer and this. It's like, okay. The problem, even when we have those statistical successes, and there's not a lot actually, it's still not a real success in the way Reich studied cancer. In that, once again, they may be successful in certain symptomatic removal, but like I said earlier, they're actually making the deeper disease worse. So, we see this, we see this statistically, we see this individually. Patients who go through allopathic cancer treatment, maybe seemingly successfully, it's like, oh, my cancer is gone, and they're so happy. It's like, okay, I'm happy at one level, but not so happy at many other levels. Is that symptomatic treatment sets the patient up for an even worse case of cancer to come back sooner or later, either in the same organ or body part, or a different organ or body part, but it's the same cancer, just deepened. Bad. You don't want that. So yeah, so Reich's Cancer Biopathy, an incredible book, incredible scientific research, incredible observations. He was this profound, deep scientist. He observed things that our modern allopathic cancer researchers cannot. Their minds will not. Their paradigm will not allow them to go there, such as Reich's observations of these transitional forms between our physical cell structures and our etheric kind of life energy life forms, kind of not yet physical, kind of these pre-material, incarnated physical forms, which kind of have more of this functional work. So right between his high power microscopes and his observations, his mind willing and able to go there, yeah, you get this. Yeah, back to our Hahnemann with his classic inscription of his organon, aude sapere, the Latin for have the courage to know, or have the courage, to engage with wisdom. Why would he say courage? Why do you need courage? It's like, well, to do Reich's kind of science, he had that courage, where most normal scientists, allopathic scientists, clearly don't have the courage because they just keep regurgitating the same conclusions over and over again, which are false, because they don't have the courage. And let me say it this way, why would you need courage? It's because when you make observations like Reich did, to accept the observations and to think new thoughts and to open yourself up to what could that even possibly mean, you need the courage that your own ego structure is going to kind of go through the ringer, so to speak. You have to go through a transformation of your own personality and soul function to even accept some of those kinds of observations and conclusions. So, anyways, I'm barely not even skimming the surface here, but this powerful book, The Cancer Biopathy, um, is powerful again, not just for cancer and all the implications that came out of that book in Reich's research, but again in our broader project of of Hahnemann's medicine and the broader therapeutics, is again this understanding that amongst many other insights, let's just point to this one, that a true deep therapeutic process cannot be a technical. It's not like you're changing the muffler on someone's car. That's a technical process. This is a deep living process we have to go through, where both the patient and the practitioner together end up engaging in a mutual transformative process. There's that famous Jung quote. I don't remember the exact wording; it's just on the tip of my brain right now. But it's like when two, it's when such a deep transformative process happens, it's like two chemical elements that meet. Both and are compatible with each other. Both chemical elements are transformed into something else. You get an actual, you get a deep chemical transformation. So anyway, this is kind of the deep implication of Reich's cancer research, the cancer biopathy, into our therapeutics. It's like, yeah, well, this is not a technical game. You can't just follow all the rules and follow the latest procedures that have come out of the latest studies and everything else, and so, oh, I did everything in the textbook, but why didn't the patient get better? Well, because we're again, you can't change a muffler. You have that mentality that you're going to get anywhere therapeutically. So that's one of the big takeaways out of, and Reich doesn't say this. That's not, he doesn't say this in the conclusion of his book. I'm just kind of drawing my own conclusion here by putting all these pieces together. It's like, yeah, we are way out of the realm of technician medicine into the realm of deep transformation medicine. So finally, the fifth book that out of my 75, I picked five for today. Very recently, I finished this homeopathic proving of placenta humanum. That's just the Latin for human placenta. So this is from a class of homeopathic remedies called organotherapy, where we take healthy tissue, healthy lung tissue, healthy heart tissue, healthy placenta in this case, potentize it into a homeopathic remedy and investigate it for what are the properties of this very special medicine when you give that to a human being. What can because normally medicines are toxic, right? We're taking poisons from nature and other toxins, even synthetic, man-made toxins, things like that. Okay, that's the history of medicine, built on toxicity. But what happens? This is a fascinating question. What happens if we base a homeopathic remedy on a healthy human tissue, or even a healthy animal tissue, a healthy liver or something like that from an animal? So placenta, as the most recent book I read, this homeopathic proving, absolutely fascinating remedy. I didn't know it until it's about a month ago. I knew of it, but I hadn't studied it. And the anatomy of the placenta is unique because it's the one organ that's developed just about 50 the cells that are contributed to making the placenta, 50% from the mother, 50% from the baby. So it's this, we'd say in politics, this bipartisan effort. The parties on both sides came together in this political initiative. Kind of they put their differences aside so that they can kind of come together. Well, this is what the placenta is. 50% comes from the mother, 50% from the baby, and that goes deep into the emotional theme of that remedy. It's like, who is the baby? Who is the child? Who is any individual within the context of their family structure? When we're young, we're deeply embedded in our family matrix, and of course, as we grow up, become independent adults, we not that we divorce our family, but we become independent, standing on our own. But it's like at the beginning, it's like where is that boundary line between the individuality of the baby and the broader energy of the whole family? And of course, you get into negative versions of that, codependence and these kinds of negative dynamics where there isn't really any room left for individuality. It's all about living in the family, living in the tribe, living in this kind of group consciousness as opposed to the individual. So, anyways, at the emotional level, this placenta remedy is absolutely fascinating. It's a proving well worth reading, especially if you're a homeopathic practitioner of any sort. Um, and so it's all of that, but in based on everything else I've been reading these last 2,500 days, it helped me to see even more a deeper theme in the remedy. It's everything I just said and more. There's a lot in this remedy, in terms of the emotional body and all that. But it's also it became clear to me that it holds anatomically, in terms of our spiritual anatomy, it kind of holds the collected karma, unresolved karma from our past lives. So when we now come into our new life, we're in the womb and we have this placenta feeding us, and we kind of have this this beginning of our relationship with our mother and soon to be our family and all of these things. Well, what did we bring with us? Well, anatomically speaking, this is what I see: the placenta holds all this past karma that we've come to work out. Now, the first place we work out our karma is with our parents and with our family and with our, all these immediate, in your face family connections. But then, of course, if we successfully um, graduate out of our family, we kind of move up through all these levels of our old past karma. So to me, this is the big energy that's being held in the spiritual anatomy of the placenta, is what I just said. It was our past karma that we come to first address, of course, to our family, but then we hopefully graduate beyond that. So that's a very quick run through of five of my top books out of my 75 books that I've read. So much more to be said, even on these five books alone, let alone all 75 books I've read. But I will keep, um, you know, gathering my insights and putting out some presentations on any of these concepts, any of these books. And I have a new Substack page. It's at jeffcorrinter.substack.com, and I will continue to put more content out there. I've just kind of launched it recently, but thank you so much for celebrating with me today. These 2,500 days, summarized in what, just under 43 minutes. Not too bad. But yeah, I will see you in my next video, and I hope, of course, you can put any questions in the comments. I'll bring those forward to future presentations, and I hope to see you soon.